Good afternoon. America and Israel have hit key economic targets in the Iranian capital overnight, and airport and oil facilities in Tehran among them. As the war enters its second week, Israel's president says bombing Iran is being done on behalf of the entire free world. Iran's president says his country will not bow in the face of bullying. Tehran says it's chosen a new supreme leader to replace Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, but the name is yet to be announced. Meanwhile, arguments about when and how Britain got involved in the war continue, with the Foreign Secretary, Yvette Cooper, supporting the Prime Minister's decision not to involve the UK in the initial military action.
America and Israel continue to bomb Iran. Eyewitnesses say the night sky was so bright with flames, it felt like dawn. Oil facilities are among the targets as flaming fuel flows through the streets. More US warplanes arrive at RAF Fairford in Gloucestershire en route to the Middle East.
We don't need them.
And Donald Trump hints that the US can do without British naval support. Both he and Sir Keir Starmer have been discussing the war.
Iranian clerics claim they've elected the successor to the late Ayatollah Khamenei, killed last weekend after Israeli airstrikes in the capital, Tehran. Among the potential candidates to replace the supreme leader, Mujtaba Khamenei, son of the late Ayatollah, Israel's threatened to target any successor. The Israeli military says it's carried out a new wave of bombing on the Iranian capital. Fuel distribution's been halted in Tehran after oil depots were hit overnight. Donald Trump and Keir Starmer have talked on the phone and discussed UK-US cooperation in the ongoing conflict in the Middle East. It comes after the president criticised the Prime Minister for his initial response. Israel says 2 of its soldiers have been killed in combat in southern Lebanon, the first Israeli fatality since fighting with Hezbollah resumed last Monday. And further attacks on the Lebanese capital, Beirut. Israel says it's killed members of Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps in the city.
Hello to you. We're here in Abu Dhabi, the capital of the United Arab Emirates, which has been dragged into the Middle East war after Iran began targeting its Gulf neighbors where US troops are based. There have been incoming missiles and drones here today, while in Iran itself, US and Israeli strikes have been relentless. The targets overnight, key infrastructure, including oil depots, setting huge fires, lighting up the night sky for miles. Israel's president says the war is being fought on behalf of the entire free world, but Iran says it won't bow in the face of bullying. Meanwhile, Sir Keir Starmer has been speaking to Donald Trump after further criticism over the UK's handling of the conflict. We'll have more on that in a moment and the rest of the day's developments here. But first, Joe Inwood reports on another night of strikes on Iran.
They have turned night into day. That was how one Tehran resident described the result of last night's bombings. The US and Israel targeting Iran's oil industry in what seems to have been a concerted attack on the country's economy. Hassan was on his way to load up his truck when the first missile struck.
I turned the truck around on the street so it would be away from the danger, but then when they fired the first missile, 2 more struck right afterwards. The first one struck right over there. Then the gasoline started flowing towards the residential areas.
And this seems to have been the result. It's said the oil ran into water channels and then ignited. Gasoline has poured into the ditches, the man filming says. Shops and homes are on fire. Israel has continued to release its own footage of this war, more sanitized than the view from street level. The country's president told the BBC that the war still has a clear plan.
What we are aiming for is very clear objectives. One, Iran cannot have nuclear capability, and they were rushing again to that capability. Number 2, their long-range missiles. It's also a golden opportunity for the people of Iran to rise up and bring change. We leave it up to them.
This war is now taking place on 2 main fronts. As well as Iran, Lebanon has now been under sustained attack for 6 days. 4 people are thought to have been killed in a strike on an upmarket hotel in the capital, Beirut. Israel began its attacks on the militant group Hezbollah, a key Iranian ally, after they fired rockets and drones across the border. But, as ever, ordinary people get caught in the middle. The Lebanese Ministry of Health today claimed more than 80 children had been killed in the strikes. Around 500,000 have now been told to leave their homes.
The massacre took place at 6 a.m. in a 3-story building where 14 people were killed and 6 were wounded. We're used to it.
Across the Gulf in Kuwait, a high-rise tower burns amid waves of drone and missile strikes. Abu Dhabi and Israel were also attacked today. Iran's strategy is to spread the chaos to America's allies, putting diplomatic and economic pressure on the US. Today, the UAE released this footage of drones being shot down.
Target destroy, target destroy.
Iran's top security official says his country would finish the war on their terms.
This can only be wrapped up when they understand that they no longer have the right to attack Iran and when they compensate the Iranian nation for the damages. This disgraceful act they have created on the international stage carries a heavy cost. They assassinated the leader of Iran. The price for it will not be small.
This was probably the most devastating event of the war so far. A strike at a school in Minab in southern Iran, said to have killed more than 150, many of them children. Israel always denied responsibility. Early reports suggested the US was behind the attack. Previously, the Trump administration said it was investigating. But now, without providing any evidence, the president said this.
We think it was done by Iran. Because they're very inaccurate, as you know, with their munitions. They have no accuracy whatsoever. It was done by Iran.
Back in Tehran, and as night turned to day, the smoke from the oil fires blocked out the sun. This war, started while diplomacy was still underway, has upended an already troubled region. The fires it started continue to spread. Joe Inwood, BBC News.
Well, John Donison is live in Jerusalem for us now. John, Israel's President Herzog, he says the war is being fought on behalf of the entire free world as we enter the second week of this conflict. How are Israelis feeling about what's going on?
Well, do you know, Clive, just watching the pictures in Joe's report there, you see that this is clearly a very asymmetric war, because actually the atmosphere in Israel is a little bit surreal. You know, you've got this war which is engulfing much of the Middle East, and here things are getting back to normal a bit. The streets a bit busier, more shops opening, the airport open for departing flights today for the first time since the war started. I think they're limiting it to 70 people per plane. At the same time, you still have Iran firing missiles. We had the sirens going off in Tel Aviv just within the last hour, and Hezbollah launched their biggest barrage of rockets from Lebanon yesterday evening. So, you know, Israel is defended by its Iron Dome missile defense shield. People have bunkers here. They're getting on with life, but at the same time, war is raging in countries all around them.
Sure thing. John, thank you. John Donison there live in Jerusalem. Well, as we've been hearing, there have been more Israeli strikes on Lebanon targeting the Iranian-backed militia Hezbollah. Wira Davis is in the Lebanese capital Beirut for us now. How intense have those attacks been, Wira?
Yeah, Clive, well, there have been dozens of Israeli airstrikes, missile attacks, particularly in southern Lebanon today, and many of those are actually outside, north of the self-imposed exclusion zone, the evacuation zones that the IDF imposed last week. And that has forced thousands of people to flee. We've been down in the south today in the town of Nabatea. We witnessed and heard dozens of Israeli airstrikes, including one less than 500 meters from the hospital where we were filming. Among the casualties today were 20 members of one family, again outside the southern exclusion zone, but they'd evacuated and tried to find accommodation in the north. They were unable to do so, and they had reportedly gone back to their home when it was attacked, and 20 members of one family killed. There were 4 survivors in that strike. And that is why the Lebanese government said that almost 400 people have now been killed, including 80 children, since in the Israeli airstrikes. Israel says, for its part, of course, its military has now again re-invaded southern Lebanon to try and tackle those Hezbollah strikes. And 2 Israeli soldiers are reported to have been killed in the last 24 hours, including, says Israel, more than 200 members of Hezbollah. So the war here still continues. Clive.
Wira, thank you for that. Wira Davis there, live in Beirut. Well, that's it from us here in Abu Dhabi.
Good evening. After a turbulent 24 hours, there was an apparent thaw in the war of words between Donald Trump and Sir Keir Starmer today as the pair held talks to discuss security in the Middle East. It's as the conflict continues to escalate in the region, with US and Israeli forces carrying out strikes targeting Iranian oil facilities. With the latest on events, here's our correspondent John Ray.
Another devastating blow to Iran. Another dramatic escalation of war. Israel hit oil depots, igniting a series of fierce infernos. Burning fuel ran the length of a street, the lifeblood of their economy. Iran is unable to defend. By morning in Tehran, locals complained that black rain fell from the skies. In this oil-rich region, the danger is of retaliation in kind.
We are not attacking our neighbors. We are attacking American bases, American, installations, American assets, which are unfortunately located in the soils of our neighbors.
And yet, in Kuwait, it was a tower block that was hit. So too, oil tankers at the airport close by.
Target destroyed.
While over the waters of the Gulf, wave after wave of Iranian Shahed drones were shot down. Iran's assembly of experts has chosen a successor to Ayatollah Khamenei as supreme leader, but is yet to reveal his identity. One front runner is his son, Mojtaba Khamenei, another hardliner, another target for the US and Israel, which continued its assault on Lebanon, claiming 200 militants have been killed. Local authorities say scores of women and children are among nearly 400 dead. Tonight, US forces have accused the Iranians of launching missile and drone attacks from heavily populated areas. They have warned civilians to stay sheltered at home. It may be that a new and even more dangerous phase of this war is about to get underway. John Ray, ITV News, Dubai.
Well, Donald Trump and Sir Keir Starmer have held a phone call hours after the US president's latest criticism of the Prime Minister. Our political correspondent Tom Sheldrick is at Downing Street this evening. Tom, what do they talk about?
Lucrezia, they spoke this afternoon for the first time in a week. It must have been awkward. Just last night, President Trump again strongly criticised Keir Starmer for not supporting his initial offensive against Iran. But Downing Street say that today the leaders began by discussing the latest situation in the Middle East and the military cooperation between the UK and US through the use of RAF bases in support of the collective self-defence of partners in the region. The Prime Minister also shared his heartfelt condolences with President Trump and the American people following the deaths of 6 US soldiers. We're told the call lasted about 20 minutes and they look forward to speaking again soon. We haven't had a US version of events, but I imagine that here they are relieved at some kind of normal diplomacy being restored. The Prime Minister is trying to tread a fine line, not getting too involved in this conflict without breaking the so-called special relationship.
All right, Tom, Downing Street, thank you. Well, there was a small explosion outside the US Embassy in Oslo this morning. Norwegian police are investigating whether it's linked to American military activity in the Middle East.